I have 5 easy to understand steps that I personally use to learn new short tracks in iRacing. Am I 100% an alien on short tracks? Not quite. I've won a couple 4000 SOF races in ARCA on short tracks and have done pretty well at some other cars on short tracks. But what I do think I can provide is a really good baseline that people can use to kick their bad habits and learn good habits when short tracking in iRacing. So let's get right to it. Alright, so we are here in Southern National in the ARCA car because that's where we're at this week and inspired this video, but these steps more or less work for every short track and car with just different applications about how they quote unquote feel. So step 1 is going to be braking to slow down. We're going to have 2 stages of braking, and that first stage is about 50% for the ARCA car but can be different for other cars. What you're looking for is you just don't want to lock up. You don't want to spin out, you don't want to lock up. Make sure that your brake bias is as low as possible without kicking out your rears under braking. That's also very important. Right here I was at about 65% because that was about what I was comfortable at with this amount of braking. So notice one more thing is that our wheel isn't really turned yet. So really turned would be kind of down here for relative, but we're also pointed down at the white line already. So this first step includes a kind of a twofold. First is with the brake. You want to brake to slow down 50-ish% for the ARCA car, pointing your car towards the white line. The vast majority of short tracks are going to be bottom line dependent. If you're at a track like IRP, you'll just do this, but with the dominant line. So at the seam where that works, just switch it for that. So pointing the car at the line while under heavy braking, but also trying to keep the wheel as close to center as possible. Step 2, trail brake. So once you're confident the car is making the bottom, you bring that brake down to about 10 to 20% and start turning the wheel. So the reason that we don't turn the wheel before this is because turning the wheel while under heavy braking leads to tire lockups and leads to massive right front tire wear. So the majority of our steering is actually going to be done once we enter the corner under the trail braking because the trail braking enforces the rotation. So we bring it down to a trail brake and turn the car. Now with this, you got to make sure to actually stay on the trail brake. No coasting in these corners. That is the number one thing that I see people do wrong in short track cars or in oval cars in general is they just like to coast. They hit their brake and then once they make the corner, they let off the brake and coast until they think it's time to bring on the throttle. There should always be a pedal input involved here. Either you're on the brake or you're on the gas. There's no coasting. And that brings me to my step 3. Step 3, we go from partial brake or the trail brake to partial throttle instantly. This keeps our car's weight happy. We're staying in our rotation and we're staying by the white line. Now in the ARCA car, partial throttle is about half. In some of the lower power cars, you might be able to skip this step and go full throttle immediately after your trail brake. But if you're at a track where there's actually tire wear involved and people are actually falling back on the long run, I would recommend keeping this in mind because let's say like last week, late models at Hickory, you could run full throttle right off of your trail brake, but it would just hurt your tires and you didn't gain much speed in the short term. So you fell way back on the long run because you did not hold this partial throttle. This step 4 is optional to a degree, but it's track dependent and always keep this in the back of your mind. So the thing about step 4 is we want to essentially lock our throttle, maybe raise it just a tiny bit, but we're waiting on the wheel more than anything. We're waiting on the wheel to unload. And you can see here, we're starting to unload the wheel, but I'm still at partial throttle. Well, why would I do that? I can just drive off the corner, right? No, this is how you get loose exits. When you see somebody fishtailing every single corner of the race at a short track, it is because they go full throttle before they are back to the center of the steering wheel. And you can see right here. I wait, and then I only go full throttle. It's a little bit choppy, but I wait till my wheel's completely straight. And here, also, same idea, step 3, then we bring it up and then full throttle when the wheel's completely straight. Brake to slow down, trail brake, transfer, hold it, full throttle when the wheel's straight. One more time, brake to slow down, trail brake, transfer, hold it, wheel straight, full throttle. So those are the 5 easy steps that apply to pretty much every single short track car and short track in iRacing. So I have one more thing to show you guys to really hammer this in. Let's take a look at some telemetry. So let's see how these concepts carry over into the telemetry. This is the VRS driving analyzer. This is my telemetry of choice, but I know there's a lot of others out there. And if you become a channel member, you actually get access to this telemetry, and you can compare what you run to what I run in just a graph like this. So what we can see here is the top line has speed, then the time delta, and then line distance, so how far apart two lines are, the throttle, the brake, the steering angle, and the last couple don't matter. So I'm actually comparing a hot lap I ran in the ARCA car at Southern National against one of my students. So I'm in the blue line and my student is in the red line, and this was from when he was still learning. But let's see, it's kind of a good baseline to show how these techniques that we talk about actually carry over into speed. So first off, I want to talk about the entry of the corner. So we'll zoom in on turns 1 and 2 right here. And you can see here, I actually get onto the brake harder and earlier than the other line. And because of this, it allows me to drop my brake down to the drag. So there was step 1, braking to slow down. And then step 2, braking to rotate. So you can see that clear distinction between braking to slow down in a straight line and then braking to rotate once entering the corner. You can kind of see our arrows on the left here. So once the braking is all rotated, then you can see step 3, getting back onto partial throttle. And you can see here getting back onto partial throttle is really 50% or less. A lot of people really want to go to that 75% instantly, but a lot of the time that's not going to work. It's very track dependent, but you have to be flexible. Less amount of throttle here than you might think, but then as the corner goes on, we start testing, and then finally, when the steering input goes to 0, I start to raise the throttle. And you can see I actually got loose here, had to pedal it a bit, but in a perfect world, that little moment isn't there. But look at the steering correlation in regards to my throttle. I don't start throttling to 100% until my steering curve is well on its way to 0 degrees. And in fact, because I did it before I got quite to 0 degrees, that's what caused this loose moment. So that's fine to do when you're pushing for speed in a hot lap, but you can really visually see if you're wanting to do a race setting that you do not want to go full throttle until that wheel is at 0 degrees, or else you're going to get this loose moment. So a couple cool things to note there. So how do we approach the corner? In 5 steps, we'll go over one more time. Step 1, we brake hard to slow down. Step 2, we bring it down to a trail brake. Step 3, once the car starts to rotate, we bring up the throttle to partial, and you can see that the steering has pretty much bottomed out in angle. So good thing we're not turning to the left anymore here. We're not having to force any more steering. And then step 5, we wait on that partial throttle until our steering starts going back to 0 degrees. And then step 6, we get to full throttle once our steering wheel is at 0 degrees. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions about this or you want to add on something to this list. If you want to learn more about iRacing ovals and a more personal one-on-one session, check the description for a link to my lesson calendar. Alright, thank you all for watching. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you all on the track.